Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So I originally planned to film a different video this morning, but I just sat down, had my coffee, watched the Sony A9 Mark III announcement, and was just blown away by the camera they presented on stage, and frankly just felt like I needed to make a video about it. That's kind of the fun thing about being on this platform. In this time, in this era, I just feel like an announcement like Sony made today is almost akin to going from film to digital with the technology they just released in this new mirrorless body. We have the first global shutter available in a mirrorless camera, which just opens up a lot of different things, a lot of features that we have been kind of restricted by not having that fast of a sensor. And for those of you that don't quite understand the global shutter, up until this point, the shutter readout was kind of more of a moving kind of line, very similar to like the mechanical shutter. And so, like in the Canon R5 here, if I'm using the electronic shutter and I'm photographing anything with extremely fast action, like swinging of a bat, tennis racket, even like a football or a soccer ball type of thing, at certain parts of the sensor, it's not reading as fast as the other parts, and so you can get some distortion on, like, the bats would not be 100% straight, or same with the racket, or the ball could be a different shape than the round like it should be. And that is what could restrict you from using the electronic shutter and then going back to the mechanical. And personally, I always, because of that, I'm always using the mechanical shutter, because if I've got any kind of distortion, my images are basically useless. So it's not worth it for me to try and use the electronic unless I'm in an environment where I need to be super silent. But my type of shooting, I rarely come across that situation. So with the global shutter, the shutter is reading the sensor is reading the complete sensor all at once. So there's no rolling shutter. For video, there's no wobble that you can get when you're panning your camera back and forth. And the same thing with the stills. So that opens up a flash sync speed that they're listing here at 1/80,000th of a second, which is insane. And right now, the sync speed, like with the Canon R5 I have here, is a 200th of a second with my strobe. So essentially with the A9III, with this new mirrorless technology, I could set my sync to whatever I want it to be. That is just mind-blowing, and it basically makes HSS, it kind of makes that where you don't even have to use HSS. You set the speed in the camera, and the camera does all the work for you. Obviously, recycle times with your strobes are going to restrict, how many flashes that you can get per second. But this camera, just shooting in regular light, natural light, like if you're at a sporting event, and you can shoot up to 120 frames per second. Let me just look at these stats here. I've got it. I just pulled it up, and I'm still just in awe of what is going on here. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of hindrance. There's no catch to it. So if you're set at 120 frames per second, you still have full autofocus and exposure. It's I guess in the past when you would try to raise your frame rate, then you would lose autofocus, or you would have blackout. There's no blackout at 120 frames a second. So you can just stick with the action. It also has the pre-shutter, what do they call it here? Pre-capture function. So if you're halfway pressing down on your shutter, before the action happens, it'll record, I believe, up to a second before you actually press the shutter. So if something happens, like if you're photographing wildlife or even sports, say, and something happens that you were not anticipating, once you press down on the shutter, it'll actually record back a full second before that. So then apparently you can go into the camera almost like a phone, and it'll show it as a video because it's potentially 120 frames per second, and then you can rewind it to that part and kind of set a stop within that time frame. I mean, it's just amazing, and it's like I said, I just feel like this this announcement, it's always been kind of like that looking over the hill in the distance. The global shutter was kind of like the next marker of advancement in this mirrorless technology, and it's been announced. It's going to be interesting to see. So this camera doesn't come out until the spring. They didn't set a firm date. You can pre-order starting tomorrow, which I'll have a link in the description below. And all this stuff comes with a pretty steep price tag. I think this camera is going to be just short of $6,000. So I mean that could hinder some of y'all. I mean, you're gonna have to kind of weigh, where you are with things, but I'm just completely amazed. And then it goes over into the video. You can shoot 120 frames per second with no crop. I'm sure it'll have, I think it's got all this is the A7R5. I'm sure it'll have, all the AI type focusing technology in that camera, which they've already kind of talked about. It also has this incredible 4-axis LCD system that they have put on this camera, which I've talked about before. By far the best system that I've come across on a digital camera. I'm hoping that in the future all cameras will adopt this system. In comparison, the R5 flips out, rotates, and then flips back in. So in some cases when I'm tethering, you can see my USB cable goes in here. And then if I need to lower my camera, sometimes I need to get it close to the floor, shoot those low angle type shots. I have to spin my LCD beforehand, and then I only get a little bit of movement here before it starts hitting that tether cable. With this camera, I can pull that out and I can get full rotation. So then when I've got my camera below me, I can see, fully see the LCD on the camera. Let me just show you real quick. So I can pull it out like this, and then I get full rotation. I'm not touching this area. So this is on this camera too. I don't see anything that they have really left off of this A9. I'm like shaking. This is just so crazy. I want to get y'all's thoughts, kind of what you feel. I am fully into the Canon system. This is one of those times. It was like when if you look back in my video history, I was all Nikon until mirrorless came along, and I needed to switch to mirrorless for the video capabilities. And that's when I switched over to Canon at the time. I have in recent, I guess within the last 9-10 months or so, been picking up some of these Sony bodies just to kind of venture in. I'm also shooting on a ZV-E1, which I haven't even talked about. It's probably my favorite new camera that I want to, I guess, show on this channel eventually. But my last handful of videos on this channel, I've been filming with the ZV-E1. It's just so easy with the camera app here. I'm controlling with my phone. So what am I going to do? I don't know. I know Canon's going to supposedly announce the successor to this, but there's a high bar that has been raised by this A9 Mark III that Sony just announced, and it's got all the other it checks all the other boxes with the dual cards. In 8-stop in-body stabilization. I'm not fully up to speed on the LCD. I know that's been a weak spot when you're comparing Canon with Sony. The LCDs are a good bit nicer on the Canons, and then I guess one other thing is just the resolution. So it's a 24.6 megapixel sensor compared to like the 45 here. I'm sure in order to attain that global shutter, they had to keep the resolution down into that kind of window. But then, you look at where are your images being used. I mean, 25 megapixels is plenty enough if you're mainly online, digital, that type of stuff. The only cases where I could dream of where you would need more in this day and age is if you're going to make large prints, or as I've done in the past for pro sports teams where we're doing banners inside of stadiums, and that's where I would usually use like the GFX Fuji system and shoot purposely for that. But for anything else, that, and also, like, you know, if you've got the A7R5, this is 65 megapixels, which I did one shoot with, and it was way overkill. But if you had a case where you needed that resolution, you know, if you've got this camera, you could just sub this in for whatever it is you might need. And I know too that I'm just a small channel on here. I'm not affiliated with Sony. I'm not affiliated with Canon. There will be, I'm sure, much more detailed info on other channels here on YouTube, but I just want to come on here, maybe start the conversation with those of you who do watch my channel here. Just get your thoughts, what you think about this camera. I think almost in just a historical aspect, I'm definitely probably going to place a pre-order on the camera. Whether or not I follow through with that, I guess I'll wait and see what Canon comes out with, just because I'm fully invested in all the Canon lenses. I've got a couple Sony lenses, but you know, when it comes to doing my job, I need backups for all my gear. I can't just show up with one camera, and I need 2, sometimes 3 cameras based on the client. So just want to give my perspective from a working professional in this business, throw that out there. Hopefully, you know, start some conversation. I like to stress that it's not all about gear on here, but I think innately as photographers, we all, or at least, you know, I speak for myself, I love checking out the gear, seeing where technology is taking us. I mean, it's just fun to to get, you know, new things in, and so these types of things excite me. I feel like we are crossing another threshold when it comes to I guess restrictions or barriers that we have to work around with these cameras when it comes to flash sync speed, the global shutter type stuff. I mean, I was just looking at some images that I went to post yesterday on my Instagram. That was kind of going to be some video that I should have coming out in the next couple of days, now that this one's coming now. But I had some ghosting on some stuff. So if you could set your sync speed with strobes, you know, anywhere above 200th of a second based on your ambient lighting, you can prevent that type of thing from happening. So very interesting. Y'all drop your comments down below if you found this video worthy. Please give it that thumbs up. Want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button down there and the little bell so YouTube will let you know where or when I'm back on here. In the meantime, find me on social media at QuantsPhoto on Instagram and X, as well as ProLight Mods on Instagram. Y'all, please stay safe and healthy out there, and I will see y'all again soon in the next one.